The biggest selling point of any gacha game is always their characters, and Genshin Impact is no exception to that. In this video, I want to share with you 10 characters who, as I see it, have a very high likelihood of becoming playable in the future. Some of them are obvious ones, perhaps you might be saving for them right now, but I have also sprinkled in a few surprises in between. Before we get into it, here are a few points of clarification regarding the criteria I'm going to be using in this list. First and foremost, all characters have to be real ones that currently exist within Genshin. This means no fictional or fictionalized characters such as the Boar Princess or Princess Mina of the Fallen Nation will make it to the list. Additionally, if a character is either dead like Hagentis or suspected to be dead like Akodomeki, then they too won't make it to the list because Hoyoverse haven't shown a willingness to implement playable dead characters in Genshin as they do in Star Rail. The list will be in order of the ones I am anticipating the most, and now that we have established the rules, that is enough stalling, let us begin with the top 10. Starting strong at number 10, we have Tartalia's sensei, Skirk, and she is an interesting one indeed, because aside from Aether, Lumine, and Dainsleif, Skirk is the only character we have seen so far that will potentially wield a completely new, quote-unquote, element, as she is a disciple of Surtaloji the Foul, who can manipulate the Abyss. Now, Skirk herself is partially inspired by Skahach, a mythical Scottish female warrior who is said to have taught the art of using the legendary spear Gay Bulg to the Irish hero Cuchulainn. And Genshin's Cuchulainn is Tartaglia, who does use a spear in his attacks, so don't be surprised if Skirk herself is also a spear user. Alternatively, and most likely, she might also be a sword user, but what would really be cool is if she dual wields a spear and a sword. Just imagine how awesome that is, it would look so badass. And for a less badass, but definitely not less interesting, at number 9, Seamus Peg. Although he is not very famous, Seamus is actually one of the oldest characters ever made for Genshin Impact's story, appearing in the manga exclusively up to this point. Aside from being the father of Jean and Barbara, Seamus is the head of the Church of Favonius, and one of the leaders of Mondstadt. I believe that there are many ways in which Hoyoverse's developers can take advantage of Seamus's position as the seneschal of the Church. Just to give you one example of a route they can go with, imagine a combination of a Retribution Paladin and a Holy Paladin from World of Warcraft, a healer who can also apply various status effect buffs to your team, which allow him to deal more damage whenever he successfully heals an ally, or they could go with a pure Holy Healer that provides utility buffs such as attack speed, interruption to resistance, and cooldown reduction. I really like Priest and Paladin characters in classic fantasy video games, and Seamus would fill that role perfectly. As for why we haven't seen him yet, well, he is currently gone from Mondstadt on a secret expedition to an unknown location. We still have one more character on that damn expedition, and I think you all know who it is. But before we get to him, we must first go through number 8 on this list, and that is the third of the Fatui Harbingers, Colombina. Just like with Seamus, Colombina is right up my alley, as it is abundantly clear that her animations will involve a lot of holy and angelic motifs. But unlike with Seamus, who I am pretty sure would be a healer, Colombina is open to all possibilities. If we go by the current trend of Tartaglia, Scaramouche, and Arlecchino, then she might be an on-field DPS. But I could see her as an off-field DPS, or a team buffer, or even an enemy debuffer. I would be very much interested in seeing whoever tackle that. Heck, she could also be a healer, and good lord, I can already imagine some really interesting and unique healing mechanics that they can give her. We can currently speculate a lot because we really don't know anything about her. However, I have a feeling that this is about to change soon because we are likely going to meet her in Natland. And speaking of Natlan, at number 7 we have a character that might become playable during the next Lantern Rite of the Natlan patch cycle, and that is Adeptus Ping. When it comes to Ping, the question is not whether she will be playable. With a design like the one she has, it is when will she be playable. I mean, come on, look at her. Hoyoverse know what they are doing, and they have been cooking this character for 3 years now. It is about time. When it comes to her element, Ping's color palette narrows down the options to either Cryo, Hydro, or Animo. Most likely Hydro if you ask me. And as for her role, well, just like Colombina, she could really be anything, but I'm personally hoping for either a Hydro debuffer that weakens the enemy by shredding defense or heavily slowing them as an alternative method of crowd control, or even a good Hydro Shielder, keyword being good, because we still don't have one of those yet. And now moving on to number 6, with a much more predictable and straightforward character, we have the highly acclaimed and much anticipated Grandmaster of the Knights of Favonius, Varka. Given the way Varka is described and hyped through the story, being called the Titan of Favonius by Ajax, holding himself back while training Eula, and having a standoff against Il Capitano, I think it is pretty obvious that he will be an on-field main DPS. Varka is actually a very interesting character because even though we still have no idea what he looks like, Hoyoverse have spent a lot of time building a kind of mental image of him in our minds by telling us that he wears black armor and painting him as a fatherly figure, which hopefully they will uphold and not completely butcher when the real model is out. Since he is known for training Razor and Eula, both of whom are physical claymore users, he himself being one should be expected too. And since Tartaglia calls him the Titan of Favonius, one can pray, please Hoyoverse, give him a unique model that is bigger than the other male models that you copy-paste on every single guy in the game. Dude, if Varka comes out and he isn't the tallest character in the game by a significant margin with a big manly beard, I am actually going to die from the inside. Look, I know Hoyo are allergic to new models, but dude, don't ruin this potentially amazing character by turning him into a sexy young man. And hey, you know what? Turn him into a complete Giga Chat and make him hold his claymore like a sword with one hand. That would be so freaking cool. Speaking of old guys who should not be turned into sexy young men, at number 5 on this list, we poetically have the 5th of the Fatui Harbingers, Pulcinella. The situation with Pulcinella is actually a bit weird, because given the fact that he is shown as the poster character of Snezhnaya in the Tevat Travails trailer, he should be guaranteed as a playable character. And when I say guaranteed, I mean even more than the Tsaritsa herself. This is because if you look at the Tevat Travail trailer, every single character that shows up in it has been officially released in the game. Even Dainsleif, who represents the Conria chapter, is confirmed to be playable in the future, and with Natlan coming out soon, I am certain we will be getting Ian-san along with it. So out of all 9 characters shown in the Tevat Travails, the only one whose fate we are still uncertain of is Pulcinella, and that worries me a lot. The biggest problem with Pulcinella is that he's going to have to get a completely new model that is unique to him, because he is a male character with unique facial features that is shorter than the young female model, but taller than the child female model. And we already talked about how Hoyoverse's animators avoid new playable models as if they were the plague. And I think that this is a fundamental problem with Genshin, because look, we all know why Hoyoverse avoids unconventionally attractive designs. It's because the best way to incentivize players into spending hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars on a character is by making said character appeal to the most amount of people, and in an ideal scenario trick some of those people into forming emotional bonds with this character so that they are more likely to spend money. This is why all of Genshin's characters are surface level saints, or in some very rare situations, morally gray at worst. And the best way to maximize revenue is to attract the most eyes, and to attract the most eyes, you want to show them eye candy. This eye candy comes in the form of highly idyllic sexy male and female designs, and this really sucks. It sucks because this philosophy completely kills any semblance of creativity. And look, I don't have a problem with hot mommies, but when every woman in this game is built like a Victoria's Secret model, it becomes so unbelievably repetitive and boring. It's almost like you are collecting plastic dolls, to be honest. As for Pulcinella, I think even his lore and story can be extremely compelling if done right, because just by looking at him I can already see the Godfather Mafia boss vibe he has, and how his political status as a mayor will influence his interactions with the Traveler once we get to Snezhnaya. So yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk on why Pulcinella would be a great playable character. Sticking with Snezhnaya and the Fatui, I have at number 4, the first of the fools, Pierro. Now, Pierro's playability will depend entirely on his true identity outside of the Fatui, because you have to remember that every single Harbinger of the Fatui is playing the role of a character on a stage. In that sense, they are actors, which is a theme that extends to much of the rest of Tevat's overarching story. But this is a topic for a different video. Pierro is easily one of the coolest characters in the entire game, and he will definitely make an enormous impact on Genshin later down the line. I highly recommend you read the conversation he has with Peruere in her 5th in-depth character story because it gives us quite a bit of information regarding how he thinks about the world. I am personally hoping that Hoyoverse go out of their way with Piero to make a kit design that they have been avoiding since the game's release, most likely for balancing purposes, and that is a multi-elemental mage. You see, there is this really interesting character in League of Legends called Hui, who has access to 3 different stances with 3 spells in each stance, giving him a total of 10 activatable spells, including his ultimate, when most other characters have 3 or 4. And as you would expect, having access to 3 stances between damage, crowd control, and utility makes him extremely situationally versatile, but also tremendously difficult to execute at an elite level. And I think it would be very interesting if Piero has such a kit, where he can switch between 2 or 3 different elements during combat, with each element giving him a slightly different role. For example, if he is Cryo, Pyro, and Hydro, then Cryo would be crowd control oriented, Pyro would be damage oriented, and Hydro can be more team support oriented, perhaps at the end of his rotation before swapping back into the rest of his team. I don't know, the possibilities are truly endless with this one. Also, as crazy as this sounds, a multi-elemental character is not entirely impossible. In fact, the character I have at the end of this list might introduce a new type of playstyle that supplements such a gameplay. But before we get to number 1, we've got to go through 2 and 3, and number 3 is Mona's master, Barbeleth. Alright, not gonna lie, I am personally really looking forward for Barbeleth, mainly because based on her voice and how Mona describes her, she should be an old woman and by extension once again have a new and unique model. Yeah, that's right. First Varka, then Pulcinella, Piero, and now Barbeleth. Yeah, this video is actually old people propaganda in disguise as a top 10 list. You damn right it is. Yeah, I am out here trying to turn Genshin Impact into Geezer Impact with this one. Hell yeah, baby. But on a more serious note, let me explain why I think she'll be so epic. Aside from breaking the conventions of hot eye candy, which is something that I really want Hoyoverse to grow some balls and do, in my opinion, the wise old wizard archetype can be a really badass one when done right. A lot of people perceive old as weakness, and while yes, it is true that you get physically weaker, age can also bring with it a huge amount of wisdom, and in a fantasy setting, wisdom translates to power. Additionally, Barbeleth is an astromancer, a mage that manipulates star magic. Just imagine how freaking cool a character like that would be. A refined old wizard who uses star magic. You cannot tell me this ain't badass as hell. Also, there is this one line where Mona says that Barbeleth used to be known as Megistus, but then changed her name to Trismegistus once she took Mona as her student just to assert dominance. And that line alone tells me everything I need to know about this character. Holy shit, she is going to be so funny. I cannot wait for her to appear in game. With that being said, bro, if Barbeleth pulls up looking like Lisa, I swear to God, I will commit atrocities. In Minecraft, of course. I will burn entire villages in Minecraft. And do you know who else is gonna be burning entire villages? Number 2 on this list. The one entombed with primal fire, Ishbalanque. I think what's funny about this character is that despite the fact that I have him at number 2, most people don't even know who the hell he is. Including me. I also have no clue who the hell he is. But given his title as the one entombed with primal fire, in addition to his role as one of the 2 mythical hero twins in Mayan mythology, my spider senses are telling me that he is going to be important. The only place we ever hear about Ishbalanque so far is in Neuvillette official introduction, where he foreshadows the return of the 7 sovereigns. And that is quite interesting because Ishbalanque should be some kind of moon god, since in Mayan mythology the 2 brothers Hunahpu and Ishbalanque were 2 young men who journeyed to the underworld to challenge the gods of death and then ascended to the heavens, becoming the sun and the moon respectively. Therefore, when you have a character like that in a game like Genshin, which has a book called Before Sun and Moon that describes Tevat's genesis, I think you can see how Ishbalanque will be a big deal in the future. And when I say future, I mean the very near future. This character is coming out in Natlan, and that nation is less than 2 patches away as of the time of the recording of this video, so get ready. Alright, we've gone through a list of 9 potentially playable characters in the future that might have really cool designs. And now Finally! At the top of the top 10, we have in the number 1 spot, Paimon. And just like I said with Pink's playability, when it comes to Paimon, it is not a question of if, but rather a question of when. Spoiler warning, it's gonna be at the very end of the Tevat Travail chapter, so we still got a long-ass time until then. Also, let's just get this out of the way right now. Paimon is absolutely going to get a completely new model in her playable form. She is obviously not going to come out the way she looks right now. So, what would a playable Paimon look like? Well, for reference, think of a design that is along the lines of these two versions of Kiana and Seela from Honkai Impact 3rd. Now, of course, she won't look identical to them, but I'm just giving you an idea of what I am expecting. The reason I have Paimon at number 1 is because when she comes out, I suspect that she will bring with her an entire new element. And I say element, but I am not really sure if it can be classified as one, since it would be a combination of all elements. I am, of course, talking about the Omni element. Who knows, Paimon might even be a free character given to players as a representation for that element, because Hoyoverse tend to do that. They give one free character of each element. You see, the Omni element is not a new concept at all in Genshin, as it has been teased by Hoyoverse ever since the release of Genshin's TCG game mode, where, surprise surprise, Paimon's cards all either consume Omni Elemental die or give you Omni Elemental ones. This is without mentioning how the symbol of the Omni element is the Triketra, which is found on Paimon herself. It's pretty clear that this will be her element. Nonetheless, her element aside, what would Paimon's gameplay look like? Honestly, anything really. As long as her animations are related to the moon and stars, it will make sense. But if I personally have to imagine a kit for her, I expect her to introduce some kind of time freeze mechanic. And I hope Hoyoverse go all the way with this. Make her actually freeze time itself, like in all of Tevat. That would be really funny. If you're worried about this mechanic being too overpowered, this can be very easily counteracted by making it so that the moment you hit enemies, time flow returns to normal, with the catch being that you trigger some kind of special effect or get a huge buff after doing so. For her weapon, I think Paimon will be a bow user, because it seems like she is partially inspired by the Greek moon goddess Artemis, who is famous for her bow and arrow. Also, Paimon's counterpart in Honkai Star Rail is March 7th, and March uses a bow in combat. Additionally, you know how Lini, Tagmari, Sethos, and Ganyu have different charge attack animations depending on how long they hold their aim shot? Imagine if Paimon has that, but her arrows are the shooting stars from the wishing screen, where her level 2 charge shot would be the 5-star golden animation. That would be cool. And that brings us to the end of this video. Nah, hold on. Did you really think I would have Paimon at the top of the list? Did you really think I would put this blabbering demon at number 1 and be able to look myself in the mirror after that? Omega Lul! Get this flying toddler off of my screen, because at number 0, we have the strongest of the Fatui Harbingers, Il Capitano. Now, why would I put Il Capitano at the top? Because he looks cool as fuck. That's my reason. That's it. What, do I need another reason? This motherfucker is so badass, his mere existence perpetually invalidates every other character in the game. With all due disrespect intended, whoever your favorite character is, they suck ass compared to Capitano. Bro, listen, all I know is when Capitano comes out, the wallet comes out. When Capitano comes out, the credit card comes out. When Capitano comes out, I will come. Wait, what? That doesn't even make any sense. Alright, cool, now watch him get killed and never become playable like Signora. In all seriousness, I do have other reasons for why I am looking forward to him, but they mostly have to do with a lore theory I have about him that I will put out sometime before Natlan. So the relevant details will be there. I am not really sure if Capitano will be playable, to be honest, but if he is, hey, you already know the type of financial ramifications that will take place on the day of his release. That's all I'm gonna say. And now we have reached the end of this video. for real this time. I was going to include some honorable mentions, but this is a top 10 video, so I didn't want to make it too long. But hey, if I forgot or didn't include a certain character whom you see potential in, then let me know down in the comments. At the end of the day, videos like these are extremely subjective, so I am sure most of you will have something to say. Until then, I have a number of other things to do, including a bunch of lore videos I am making, so huge thanks to everyone who supports this channel on Patreon, and thank you for watching. For now, I've been My Name for Now, and I will see you soon. Take care.